It's our moral obligation to do math. So what are you studying?
Complex numbers.
Complex numbers. And what are complex numbers?
They're the biggest numbers in the universe.
Okay.
The Earth universe is what she said.
The Earth universe,
Or something.
as opposed to the Mars universe, or the Marvel universe. You know, the one with Spider-Man and Captain America. And what about complex numbers are you studying today? What special letter do you have?
I.
I. And what does I equal?
-1.
Nope.
Sort of, the square root of negative.
Very good. Equals the square root of -1. What's so special about the square root of -1?
I don't know.
You don't know. Well, the square root of -1 doesn't exist. There's no number times itself that'll give you -1. That's why it gets to be I. Or in this case, I to the first power. But your question is, what is I to the 60th power? So what you need is a handy little pattern of i's. So if you have I to the first is the square root of -1. So if we square that, if we say what is the square root of -1 squared? Well, what happens when you square a square root?
I'm thinking.
She's thinking. What if we use an easy number?
Oh, it's times itself, kind of.
So what is the square root of 9 squared? What does that equal?
It equals.
I'm gonna check my text messages while you do this. We got the ladies texting me. What's the answer? Hurry, quickly.
81?
No, it's not 81.
Forget.
What's the square root of 9?
3.
3. What's 3 squared?
9.
9. So what happens when you take the square root and then square a number?
It becomes 3?
You just get
9.
the number.
Oh, okay.
So if we square the square root of -1, all we're going to get is
a -1.
-1. So we're going to erase all this because this looks ugly. And we're going to say I squared is just -1. Okay? Then we have I to the third power. This one's a little bit trickier. Okay, hold on. There's a cat in the bag and it's eating it. Okay. That crisis is averted. Long story short, I to the third power is just -I. Okay?
How did you get that?
Because... No, shut up. Because it's -1, which is I squared. Yes, times I, which is the square root of -1. Right? But what's the square root of -1?
-1.
No, it's
I.
I. So we have -1 times I.
Okay.
And what's 1 times anything?
1. I.
I, but it's negative, so this isn't positive I anymore. Now it's -I. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Did you forget everything from your math classes?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Alright, and now we have everything. Now we have I to the fourth power. Here's the good one. This is the one that's most important. I'll put a star next to it. I to the fourth power is 1. Okay? You want to know why?
Sure.
Why are you making me explain it? Well, I don't want.
Because you times it again.
As you have times
Positive.
you
Negative times a negative equals a positive.
more or less. Okay, so this follows a pretty good pattern here, and it's written in your book. If you look on your book on page, what was I saying?
That
On this is 14. Okay, I was reading the book. It was a good book. Okay, are you happy now? Don't cry.
I feel like we need to see.
No. So it follows this pattern. It goes -1, -I, 1. It would go back up to just,
Negative.
well, I.
I.
So it goes I, positive I, -1, -I, positive 1. And it will follow this pattern forever. Because once it gets to 4, that's just 1, and 1 times anything is that. Okay. So when we get to I60, you're thinking this is I raised to the power of 4 times something else, right? And you want to know what is that something else. If you don't know this because you forgot how to your factors of 4, which you have, and we say what's 60 divided by 4? Quick, say 15.
15.
Very good, it's 15. Yay. Okay.
Okay.
So it's 4 times 15, and what's left over? Nothing, right? Just 60. So, if we have 4 times 15, that means that the 60th power would be in the same line as the 4th power. Which means I to the 60th has the exact same value as I to the 4th.
Which is 1.
Which means I to the 60th power
Is 1.
just equals 1. Hooray! Okay, it took us 7 minutes to determine the answer was 1. Fist pound it. Oh, okay. 1 down. Many more to go.
Now we're on number 3.
Now we're on number 3. I'm going to keep this handy reference of I's because it'll answer all of our problems. So what's number 3?
Number 3 is -I.
In your book.
Oh.
I to the 27th power.
I
Okay.
think that's multiple of 3.
That doesn't matter. We don't care about multiples of 3. We care about multiples of
4.
4.
That might be a mistake.
So we say 4 times what gets you closest to 27?
4 times 5.
Is 20.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going.
Oh, 6.
6, which is 24.
Mm-hmm.
So I to the 24th power would be equal to 1. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't care about that. We care about what's left over, which would be I to the 3rd power. And what is I to the 3rd power?
-I.
So now we have I to the 24th, which is 1, times
-I.
-I, which means the answer, I to the 27th power, is
-I.
-I.
See, I knew it was. I told you the first time. See?
Okay. She's all happy now. She can do math. Alright, so that's that.
Now we're on number 5.
Now we're on number 5.
Which is to the 14th power.
So I to the 14th power. Try it at home, kids.
It's -1.
Don't shout it out. Ah, she ruined it.
Alright, that's just for my benefit.
Oh, it's for your benefit now. Okay. So I to the 14th is indeed I to the 12th times I to the 2nd. I to the 12th is just 1. I to the 2nd is...
-1.
And what is 1 times -1?
-1.
-1. So I to the 14th is just -1. Okie dokie?
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. We didn't do any of the negative ones. We should do one of the negative ones. Because those are a little different. Alright, so I to the -3rd power. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I to the 1st power is just I,
Mm-hmm.
what would I to the 0th power be? would be 1. It's the same as 4. Okay, so I to the 0th is 1, which means I to the negative first would be?
I to the negative first is negative I.
Would be negative I, which means I to the negative second would be?
Negative 1.
Which means I to the negative third is?
I.
Is just I. I think that's right. You want to check? Let's check, because I'm not sure. Hold on, we're checking. Okay, that was correct. Go us. Alright, so number 2, we're going to try that one, because she says, I didn't do this one on my own. So I'm going to make you do this one on your own. I'm going to sit over here and play music. So I to the negative, hold on, 9th, that's terrible negative. Where are my dots going?
So that means that would be a negative I. No, it would be 1, right?
I don't know.
Negative number, and so then that's 1. I forget. Can you help me with that again?
Okay, so what's I to the 0?
1.
So what would I to the fourth, or negative fourth be? Wait, does that work? 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, what's I to the negative fourth?
1.
1. So then you just keep counting by 4s.
But so even though it's negative, it still equals 1 like a number 4 does?
Right, because you think 4 times what gets you close to negative 9? You'd say negative 2. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, but that's still a multiple of 4, which means it's still equal to just 1. And then what's left over? If that's negative 8, that means you have how many exponents left?
1.
Just 1. So then I to the negative first power, we said was what? If this is 0, then negative 1 would be
1. Negative I.
negative I. And we can actually do this a little bit better, because this still has us doing negatives here, and that's not on our chart. Our chart only has positive numbers, right? So what if instead of 4 to the 4 times negative 2, what if we said 4 times negative 3? That would be I to the negative 12th. Which means over here, this would have to be positive, because we have to get back to negative 9. So this would be I to the positive 3, because negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9. Right? And then I to the third, we said, is negative I. So that might be a better way to do it, is to think of a number that goes past it. That way the second one can still be positive. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not really? Say not really. Okay. Well, let's try number 4 then. So negative 4. Hopefully kids at home are getting this. They're like, oh, it's so easy. I should be in college math. And then the old lady yells at you like, you don't know. This is really hard stuff. Okay, so I to the negative 15th. Try it on your paper. Do it on your paper. Do it on your own. Break time. Get some snacks, people. Don't look at my screen. Why don't I have velociraptors in my little image gallery? How about regular raptors? None. Yes! Alright, kids, name that dinosaur. Not you, you're working. You're not allowed to cry yet. It's only the first day of math class. Remember, we're looking for I to the 4th times something. Right? That gets us close to 15. Or in this case, negative 15. All these markers have the same color. Where's my bright green? Because I'm going to give him a mohawk. Totally radical.
Negative 2.
Well, that only gives you...
Plus 4 times negative 2 is 12.
What? 4 times 2 is...
4 times 3.
Okay. But now what's the problem with that? Is that that still doesn't get you to 15, which means...
No, it's not times, it's plus, right?
Okay, so we're doing it that way.
Plus 4 times 50 plus 3.
So but it's got to be negative 3,
Okay.
right? So now you have to think about what I to the negative third power is.
I to the negative is I.
You tell me.
It's I.
How do you know that? That's a terrible reason. Okay, here's the problem with this: is we don't know. I mean, we should know, but we don't. What are the 4 that we know for sure? We know 1, 2, 3, 4. None of those are negative, so we don't want this to be a negative, right? So this number should be negative something bigger than 15.
Negative bigger than 15. Okay.
So instead of negative 3, what if we did something else? Like one number less than negative 3.
16.
Okay, so what if we did 4 times
4.
negative 4? Okay, so that would be negative 16, which means this part over here would have to be what?
Positive.
16. We want 15. This is positive
1.
1. So this way we have I to the first power, and you'd be like, oh, duh, I to the first power, it's right here, it's on my list. And it's just I.
And that becomes a 0.
Well, this becomes 1,
1.
because it's a product of I to the 4.
1
So it's 1
I,
times.
which is I.
Yes, it is. So I to the negative 15th power is I. Okay? We're going to practice this some more? Is that what you're telling me? Okay. Alright, let's go on to the next section though, just because. So what is number 7?
Number 7 is the square root of negative 16.
Alright, the square root of negative 16. I'm going to bring my chart back over. Actually, we don't even need our chart for this part. Also, my right click button's not working. Stuff I put up with to help you do math. Alright, square root of negative 16. Do you remember how to do that? No? Okay. So what you have to do is we need to break up this. Okay. Do you remember when you did algebra and you said like you could do the square root of 6? Actually, that's a terrible example. The square root of 12 is the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And then we could say the square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of 3. And we simplified it like that. Okay, we can do that with this. Only now, all we want to do is we want to get rid of the negative. Because you can't take the square root of anything negative. It doesn't exist. That's the whole point of the lesson. So we can say this is the square root of negative 1 times
16.
the square root of 16. And then we can take the square root of both of those. We know the square root of negative 1 is I times the square root of 16, which is
Square root of
You need to make a chart. The kids are screaming right now. Just say 4!
Oh,
Yeah, 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. So the square root of 16 just works out to I times 4,
which is 4i.
which the very prettier way of putting that would be 4I. That's it.
And that's the answer?
That's the answer.
Okay.
Nice and easy. You're not going to tell us the problem, you're just going to do it yourself?
No, I said it's negative 1
Oh.
times the square root of negative 5.
Alright, negative 1 times square root of negative 5. Alright, same idea. Yes? So what do we want to do?
We want to separate the negative.
Okay.
So it's the negative 1 times the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 5.
Good. Okay. What can we take the square root of here?
It's going to be I. It's going to be negative 1 times I times the square root of 5.
Okay. So that's about it. Except negative 1 times I would just be
Negative I.
I think that's right. Let's check it just to be sure. Okay, it turns out we were correct. Because we're always correct over here. We're mathemagicians. You see what I did there?
Mathematician.
Yeah, it's like mathematicians, but mixed with magicians. Alright, what's next? Why do I not have magician as a picture I can look up? Boom, mathematicians. You never tell us what it is. We're just sitting over here.
Negative 1 times the square root of negative 36.
Alright, cool. And it looks like you're already done. So, soon, you can start knocking out some of these steps without actually doing it. So if you have the square root of a negative number, what does that mean the part of your answer is going to be?
It's going to be the square root of negative 1 times positive.
Okay, but what is always the square root of negative 1 though? I. So we know we can just take an I out of this. And then can we take the square root of regular 36? What's that? 6. So we have I times 6 times negative 1. Yeah, once you take the square root, you have to remove the square root sign. Okay? Then we just simplify, so negative 1 times 6.
Can we do negative 1 times I and negative I times 6?
Yes, you could. Or you could say negative 1 times 6 is negative 6 times I.
Okay.
But your super complicated way of going through that, yeah, that's fine too. Good job. I'm so proud. Yes. I didn't say that. I know it. What's next?
The square root of negative 12.
I'm bored with this. Don't you know how to do these now? What do you... So you have the square root of a negative, which means automatically we have what? I. Say I. I times the square root of 12. Now we just need the square root of 12. So can we break up that?
Yes.
Into what?
The square root of 2 and the square root of 4.
2 times 4 is 8.
Square root of 6.
You can't take the square root of 2 or 6. Getting closer.
Square root of 2.
You can't take the square root of 2.
At 4?
Oh, the square root of 4 times the square root of a number times 4 that equals 12. Less than 4, more than 2. 3! There you go. Because 4 times 3 is 12. Yay, math. Okay. And then we can take the square root of 4, which is
2.
2 times square root of 3 times I. We can't take the square root of 3, that's irrational. But we can switch around I and 2, so it's just 2I.
And that's the answer.
Yes. This should be like a band name.
2I square root of 3.
Yeah. No?
That's interesting. It's kind of long.
Well, yeah. I'll work.
I could be a band name.
That's lame. It is lame. It's too much of a ripoff of One Direction. Best band.
What about I to the 4th?
I to the 4th. That's just 1. Ha 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 ha. That means, we should get the kids starting to call it 1 to the 4th direction. Yeah.
4th direction.
Yes. That'll show up. Alright, we still working or are we done?
The next one is 11, which is 2 plus the square root of negative 25.
2 plus the square root of negative 25. Alright.
2 plus 25. 2 plus
I don't know if you can hear her over there, but she's doing work. So we have 2 plus I times 5, which we can rewrite as...
7I.
No! These are totally different terms. You can't add I's to non-I's. That's like saying I've got ears and eyes and I want to put them together. You can't. That's disgusting.
But I want to.
Nobody cares what you want. It's 5I plus 2. Oh man, I just checked for the first time to see if the microphone is on.
Was it?
Yes. That would have been embarrassing. Just been sitting here for 28 minutes talking about dinosaurs in One Direction for nobody to hear. You can't say that on the internet. Oh, I can't even put this up anymore.
You can edit it out. You can edit. You can edit. You can edit. You can edit. You can edit.
It's too late.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
Can I do it again?
The whole thing?
No.
What's next? That, okay. So 3 to the square root of negative 8 minus 5 times square root of negative 8. That's, or is that 18?
Yes.
Okay. So we do these separately. So what do we have on the left? So we get the negatives out of our radicals. Now you just need to know what the square root of 8 and 18 is, which would be really quick if you had any concept of numbers, which sadly you do not. You know, this is on Khan Academy. I'm going to make you practice simplifying radicals because it's kind of embarrassing. But I know you, and you don't know how to do negative 8. Oh, you did it! I'm so proud. It is the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. We do the square root of 4, of course, because we can take the square root of 4, because it's 2 times the square root of 2. We can do this other side over here. How about 18?
Square root. Let me see. Of 9.
Okay, square root of 9 times
2.
Square root of 2. So we get 5i Square root of 9 is
3.
3 times negative 2. Okay? That way. Alright, so we say 3 times 2, 6i, times square root of 2, minus this side, 5i times 3 is 15i, times square root of 2. Okay? Now since both of these terms have I and square root of negative 2, we can actually combine them. These are like terms. Okay? So we say 6 minus 15 is negative 9. And then times I, so negative 2. So as long as they have the same exact square root, and they're both I to the same power, you can totally subtract them. What are you looking up? Did I get it wrong?
No.
Okay then. Just checking my answers. She doesn't believe in me. Stop saying that. No, you're not. Okay, what's next?
The square root of negative 15 times the square root of negative 15.
Where are you getting this from?
What's that?
I thought we were doing the odds.
That is an odd
Yeah, we've done like every single problem. You just love doing these, don't you? Or you have no idea how to do them and you want to practice. Whoops. So the square root of 6 times the square root of negative 15. Okay? Quick rule, I think it's in your book too. You can't actually combine these since they're both negative. And we're going to see why shortly. So we work out square root of 6. We can't really simplify that, so that's just I times the square root of 6. Yeah? Yeah? And the square root of 15, can't do a whole lot with that either. So we have I to the 6 times I to the 15. No, it's just we don't do complex numbers in real life that much. Unless you're an engineer. And I'm just a middle school math teacher. Okay. So what we do is we say we can do I times I, which is I squared, which is
negative 1.
so we end up with negative 1. We can do the square root of 6 times square root of 15. We can combine them now because they're both positive. We can't do them when they're negative. We can do it when it's positive. So square root of 6, or 6 times 15 is just, I'll give you a hint on this one, it's 90.
Okay.
You can also practice your multiplying on khanacademy.org.
Okay.
And now we can actually simplify the square root of 90.
The square root of 10 times the square root of 9.
Very good. And we can do that because the square root of 9 is
3.
3. So now we have negative 1 times 3 times square root of 10. And then negative 1 times 3 is just negative 3 times the square root of 10. Okay? Okay. What's left on there you don't know how to do? And so help me if you say all of it. She wants to say it. 17. Alright, square root of negative 27 over
Square root of negative 6.
Oh, bummer. Alright. Did you talk about why you can't have radicals in the denominator? Not this year, but last year? Probably. Okay. I don't think that's going to come into play here, but something to keep in mind. So we can factor the I out of both of these, right? So we can have this I times
square root of
27
over the I times the square root of 6.
Very good. Okay. Can we break down the square root of 27?
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. By 3.
And 3.
7.
times some number which equals 27. It rhymes with line and brine and dine.
9.
Very good, 9. Okay. So, so the square root of 9 times the square root of 3 all over I to the square root of 3. Alright. So this one works out, very nicely. And that since we have I divided by I is nothing, that cancels. Square root of 3 divided by square root of 3
Is
cancels. I don't want to say nothing, it's 1. Sorry. So all we get is the square root of 9, and the square root of 9 is just equal to 3. So all this mess, square root of negative 27 over the square root of negative 3 just equals positive 3. Okay. Okay. What's left? 18. Is not the same exact problem, only with the less negatives. Alright. Let's do it. So is this top part going to stay the same?
Yes, top part stays the same. Bottom part.
So it's going to be I times square root of 9 times square root of 3. What can we do with the bottom? You can do
simplify.
You can do
Nothing.
nothing.
And then you simplify.
Okay.
No, it's not.
No, yeah. I'm sorry.
And then you cancel out the 3.
So you cancel this out.
And it's 3i.
That's it. Are you starting to catch the powers?
Sort of.
Okay. I get it. Powers.
What about number 20?
That was subtle. I'm giving you a hint. Powers. Like,
I see.
yeah.
Power.
Fashionably late to the joke party. What are we doing?
20.
20. I to the 35th. Okay. Totally normal number. Plus 5 to the negative 9th. Alright. Oh, it's times the square root of negative 39. Oh, not 39. Whoa, where are these numbers coming from? Space. That's actually a plus. I don't even know how to read. Okay, so we leave the left side alone for now. Let's do that. That'll work. On the right side, even the kid should be able to knock this one out. Square root of negative 9 is equal to?
59.
Well, just 3i. Because it's 5 times 3i. You're ahead of us. That is 15i, though. Good job. Okay, so 59. So, this one's a little bit different. You can't combine these as is. Because they're to different powers, so you can't combine stuff with different powers. Those are different terms. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
You can't add x to x squared. So what we need to do is simplify I to the 35th. So that's like what we did at the very beginning. You remember that? So we said it was I to raise to the 4 times something. How many lives does a cat have?
9.
That's wrong. It's actually 8.
No, it's not. Cats have 9 lives.
No, but the answer is 8. I don't know why you'd say 9. Don't give me that look. Because 4 times 8 is 32 times I to the what? What would we need to get to 35? 32 plus what?
Well, it's 4 times 8 again.
32.
3.
Plus 3. Okay, so 4 to the 8th, this is just 1. I to the 3rd is?
Negative I.
Negative I. So what we end up with here is we have negative I, which is now to the first power, plus 15i. So now they're the same term, which means we can totally combine them. So it's negative 1 plus 15.
We negative I.
No, -1 plus 15. If you have $15 and you spend 1.
But that's an I.
Yes, it is. So is this. At this point, I could be anything. This could be what's negative x plus 15x. The answer would be...
It would be negative 15.
No.
No, 15 squared.
What? No.
No, 15.
You're adding them. -1 plus 15.
Oh, it's 14.
It would be 14x. So in this case, negative I plus 15I is just 14I. That's your answer. What?
You're so cute.
Ah, you're so slow at math.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Is that it?
What about
23? Alright. I got time for 23 more. So we have 2I squared. That's a good band name. 2I squared. Minus 2I squared to the third. Oh man. Pain. Alright.
But I to that, so that's going to be 2 times -1 minus 2 times -1 to the third.
2 times -1 minus, she's saying 2 times -1 raised to the third. Alright. So 2 times -1 would be so -2 minus -2 third to the third power. Then -2 to the third power would be
-2, that's +4. And then that would be a -8.
alright.
I got it without.
So we have -2 minus -8. If you subtract the negative, that's the same as adding.
That would be -1 times -8. Could be.
We're not timesing anymore. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's -2 plus 8.
It's 6.
It is 6. Pound it. Woo! Atomic fist bumps. Alright, so that's it. Hopefully you learned something. Go to Khan Academy, look for, I don't know, this might be complex numbers. Or it might be imaginary numbers. But there's lots of good practice on there. Also, simplifying radicals are a really good skill to have, which helps you when you need to know what the square root of 18 is. Being able to break those down pretty quick, that's nice to know. Alright, have a good night.